Hey guys, today we're going to look at pseudo classes and pseudo elements, and I just want to apologize off the bat if you hear any construction noises. They're doing construction outside of my apartment and there's not much I can do. But anyway, let's get started like usual. So let's make an index HTML file. Again, we can use emit to just write an exclamation point and hit enter, and it will lay out an HTML file for us. We're going to make a pretend nav bar, so I'll use the nav tag, and inside let's make 4 divs with the class of nav item. Again, this is emit at work right here. So let's do home, about, blog, and contact. Save that. I'm going to run with live server. Again, this is a VS Code extension that will put your HTML on the browser for you. It's called live server. So to make our nav bar look more like a nav bar, we're going to add some CSS to it. So let's say nav display flex. And we're going to justify content, flex, and now I'm not going to go over these properties too much because that's not the point of this video. And for each div, we'll give it a padding of 1 em, 2 em, 1 em, 2 em. When you write padding like this, it starts with top, right padding, bottom, left, in that order. So this is kind of a shorthand way of doing it. So we're going to talk first about pseudo classes, and pseudo classes are a way to conditionally apply CSS to elements based on certain properties. So the first one we're going to look at is first child. So the way you write a pseudo class is with this colon next to the selector that you're using. So if we write div colon first child, and we apply the color of blue. So first child is a pseudo class that will only apply this style if the element is the first child of its parent element. So you can see here that the blue is only applied to home because home is the only one here that is the first child of nav. This would be the second child, third, and fourth. So first child selects only the first one. There is also a pseudo class called last child, which I'm sure you can guess does the opposite. And let's just give it a color of red. So last child selects the last child, this div, and you can see that contact is red. There is also another pseudo selector or a pseudo class called only child. So if we were to do div only child and give it a color of green, green. So nothing turns green here because this would only apply if there was a div that was the only child of a parent element. So for example, if we had a section tag and we gave it a div here and said only child, this would be green because this div is the only child of this parent element. You can also write these not just by selecting the element, but you can use the class. So if we wanted to say, let's just change actually one of these, instead of saying div last child red, if we said dot nav item, so now we're selecting anything with the class of nav item, that's a last child, we're going to make red. And again, this just stays red. You can see if I commented it out that it still works, but you can select classes, IDs, so it's not just for selecting elements. So let's look at the next pseudo class called Nth Child. So let's do .nav item Nth Child 2, and let's give it a color of pink. So Nth Child will apply the style to any child that is the number child of what you pass in. Sorry if that's a little confusing, but if we pass in 2, we look for any class of nav item that's the second child. In this case, the only nav item that's the second child we have here is this about, and that's why about gets the color of pink. We can also include a formula within Nth Child 2. So if we include 2n, this would mean that every second child will get the color of pink. So if we save this now, you'll see that both about and contact get the color of pink because we have second child here, and then every other child will get this color of pink. You can also include an offset as well. So if we wanted to do 2n plus 1, this would give only the third child right here the color of pink, and as you can see, blog here is pink. So the last pseudo class we're going to look at, and there are many more, I'll include a link in the description to all of the pseudo classes, but the last one I really want to look at is hover, just because you see it everywhere and it's very useful. So let's look at nav item hover, and we'll give it a color of gray. So this is just really helpful, and you see this all the time with nav bars especially. So when you point at any of these nav items that have hover on it, it will change color. And this kind of helps the user identify what they're hovering over. And this isn't a pseudo class that I'm about to show you, but this is usually paired with just a CSS property called cursor. So if you write cursor pointer, now whenever you point at any of these nav items, they will get the cursor pointer from this class, and they will also get the hover effect for color gray. So you'll use this all the time whenever you're making a nav bar. So that's pretty much all I'm going to show you for pseudo classes. Again, there's a lot out there, and you can do some pretty cool stuff with it. I'm going to turn the topic over to pseudo elements, and I'm just going to cover the two main ones. Pseudo elements are a way that you can actually use CSS to actually add elements within your code. So the two that we're going to look at are before and after. So I'm also going to change up what we have going on in our HTML as well. I'm going to get rid of the nav. And in our section, let's just make 4 divs with a class of, we'll pretend like we're making a blog. We'll say post 1, post 2, post 3, and post 4. Okay, so again, pseudo elements are a way we can actually add content to these divs just by using CSS. So let's take a look at before. So if we did .blog post, and for pseudo elements you actually use 2 colons, not just 1, and we did before. So using pseudo elements, you have this new property called content, and content is pretty much what you want to insert before each one of these divs. So we can actually say we wanted to add a dash before all of these blog posts. We can just write dash as a string, save that, and now what we pass through in content is now put before each one of these blog posts. And after works very similarly. So if we did blog post : after, and again we use this content property, and we can give it an author. So let's say author Cam. Save that, and after will place whatever you put in content after blog posts. So those are the two main pseudo elements, and there's not nearly as many as there are for pseudo classes. And you can actually do some pretty crazy stuff with these. They're more powerful than just adding some words. And I'll probably do some videos that cover some of their use cases. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching. If this video helped you out, be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I will see you guys next week.